So we saw this in the previous class that in a Carnot cycle you have got four processes and all the four processes are reversible. So 1, 2 is isothermal expansion, 2, 3 is isentropic expansion, 3, 4 is isothermal compression, and 4, 1 is isentropic compression. And we started with the condition Q12. Okay, so Q12, process 12 is isothermal. So for an isothermal process, Q is equal to W. So we went ahead and wrote this as P1 V1 into ln of V2 by V1. Either you can keep it as capital V or small v. Okay, so and we can further write this as, so let me keep this as small v, RT1 times ln of V2 by V1. Okay, so this is our Q12 and this is a heat addition process. So I told you during the isothermal process there is heat addition. Okay, so if you look at the line diagram which we drew, so from the source heat is being supplied. Okay, so that is heat addition. So process 1 2 is heat addition, and from the sink heat is being rejected, so that is at the lower temperature TL. So Q34 is going to be heat rejection. Okay, so we wrote this Q34 as P3V3 P3V3 times ln of final state by initial state, so V4 by V3. Okay, and we wrote this as RT3 times ln of V4 by V3. This is what we did yesterday, but one thing what we forgot to do is heat addition is positive. So this term is okay. But when you go to Q34, this fellow is heat rejection. Heat is leaving the system. So this is supposed to be minus P3V3 minus RT3. If I have to remove this minus sign, then I can take that inside the ln and invert the ln. So I can write this as, to compensate for the minus, if I take the minus inside the logarithmic term, then I can write this as RT3 ln of V3 by V4. Okay, this is what we failed to do yesterday, and that is why we were not able to conclude the answer. Okay, so this is your expression for Q34. Because it is heat rejection, you need to have a negative sign before it. Okay, so if you look at the textbook, they would straight away give this as RT3 ln of V3 by V4. Okay, they won't give any explanation. If you look at Mahesham Ratu, he has simply given this as RT3 ln of V3 by V4. Okay, so now this is according to the line diagram which we had drawn yesterday. This is the heat supplied Q1 and this is the heat rejection Q2 according to the line diagram. Okay, when I say equal to Q1 equal to Q2, this is according to the line diagram which we drew yesterday. Hope you remember that. Okay, and then I used the processes 2 3 and 4 1. These two processes are isentropic processes, so we used P3 V3 power gamma is equal to P2 V2 power gamma. And so if we use this particular relationship, then we can rearrange the term and write this as P3 by P2 equal to V2 by V3 whole to the power gamma. This is what we will get. And then you can use the ideal gas equation of state and write this as P2 V2 by T2 is equal to P3 V3 by T3. Okay, and I can rewrite this as probably T3 by T2, or let me write T2 by T3, whichever, both will give you the same answer. So T2 by T3 is, or let's say T3 by T2. Let me say T3 by T2. So that would be P3 V3. So this is T3. And this is P2 V2. So P3 by V2 is already V2 by V3 to the power gamma. V2 by V3 to the power gamma, and then we have a V3 by V2. So if you look at the powers, okay, so for V3 you have the power 1, and in the denominator you have a gamma. So if that is taken to the numerator, it will become minus gamma. So what you will have is V3 by V2 whole to the power 1 minus gamma. Okay, V3 by V2 whole to the power 1 minus gamma. Okay, so similarly we can do for process 4.1 also. So if you do for process 4.1, so here I have did T3 by T2. So for the other process it would be T3 is the final state and T2 is the initial state. So I can write this as T1 by T4, which is equal to V3 is the final state. So here V1 will be the final state and V4 is the initial state. And this is whole to the power 1 minus gamma. Okay. And I said this T3 can be replaced and written as TL. T3 is TL. And T2 happens to be TH from the TS diagram. Okay. And what I have here is TH by TL. So let me invert this. So from this equation, what I'll have is T4 by T1 equal to V4 by V1 whole to the power 1 minus gamma. So T4 happens to be TL again, and T1 happens to be TH. So now if you compare these two equations, TL by TH I have on the right hand side. So if the right hand sides are equal, the left hand sides are supposed to be equal. So from these two equations, I can infer that V3 by V2 whole to the power 1 minus gamma is equal to V4 by V1 whole to the power 1 minus gamma. Okay, and I can take this power on both the sides because I have common powers. These powers can be removed, and what I'll have is V3 If I remove the powers, I can rearrange the equation and write this as V3 by V4 equal to V2 by V1. Okay, so let us have this result and let's write the equation for efficiency. And we found from the line diagram yesterday that the efficiency is 1 minus Q1 by Q2. And Q1 here is Q12 and Q2 here is Q34. So for Q1, I can write this as RT1 ln of V2 by V1 whole divided by RT3 ln of V3 by V4. Okay, so from the result which we have got now, this V3 by V4 is equal to V2 by V1. So I can cancel out these two terms. And R is common in the numerator and the denominator. So this can also be cancelled. So what is left out is 1 minus T1 by T3. And this T1 is nothing but the higher temperature TH. And this T3 is nothing but the lower temperature TL. Okay. Again, we have made some mistake somewhere. Sorry. You also didn't tell me. So this is not Q1 by Q2. This is supposed to be Q2 by Q1. Efficiency is 1 minus Q2 by Q1. Sorry about that. So efficiency is 1 minus Q2 by Q1. It is not Q1 by Q2. This is 1 minus Q2 by Q1. Work then divided by heat supplied. So Q1 minus Q2 divided by Q1. So that will give me 1 minus Q2 by Q1. So if you do that, if you substitute the values, you will get 1 minus RT3 ln of V3 by V4 whole divided by RT1 ln of V2 by V1. So I can cancel out this ln term and I can cancel out this R. T3 happens to be TL, so it is 1 minus TL by TH. And if you keep the source temperature as 1 and the sink temperature as T2, then it will be 1 minus T2 by T1, just like 1 minus Q2 by Q1. Okay, so this is something which you should remember always. Okay, so this is your Carnot cycle. So Carnot cycle, you can see the cycle, the arrow marks point in the clockwise direction. So it is a work delivering device. So it is a heat engine. Okay, so it is a work delivering device. So that is your Carnot cycle. Okay, and we also have a reversed Carnot cycle, the same picture, but the only thing is you can see that the cycle is reversed. So 1, 2 is isentropic compression, 2, 3 is isothermal compression, 3, 4 is isentropic expansion, and 4, 1 is isothermal expansion. And look at the arrow marks. The arrow marks are pointing in the anti-clockwise direction. Okay, so when I said Carnot cycle, it is the heat engine works on the Carnot cycle. Then your reversed Carnot cycle, you can understand that the refrigerator and the heat pump works on a reversed Carnot cycle. So just like I did for this Carnot cycle, efficiency is 1 minus TL by TH. Using the reversed Carnot cycle also, you can find out that the COP of the refrigerator, okay, the COP of the refrigerator, if you remember, we said it is Q2 divided by Q1 minus Q2. So if you use or if you follow the same method as I have done before for the heat engine, you will find that COP of the refrigerator is T2 by T1 minus T2. And remember that this is for a reversed Carnot cycle where all the four processes are reversible. So for a Carnot refrigerator, for a reversible refrigerator, this is the value of COP. Similarly, for a heat pump, if you remember, for the heat pump, we wrote it as Q1 divided by Q1 minus Q2. So now if you use this reversed Carnot cycle, you will find that the COP of the heat pump is T1 divided by T1 minus T2. Okay, so you will end up getting these two relationships. Okay, but I'm not going into that because if we start going into each and every one of this equation, then we won't have sufficient time. Okay, you can try that, or possibly we can do that as one of the assignment also. Okay, so make a note of it. So your heat supplied or heat rejected can be replaced by the source and the sink temperatures respectively, and we will talk about it later on when we deal with absolute thermodynamic temperature scale. And there is a relationship between this heat transfer and the absolute temperature. We will talk about that later at the end of this unit. Okay, so your Carnot cycle where all the four processes are reversible, that is the standard reference cycle, and it is based on this Carnot cycle that you have a reversible heat engine. Okay, a reversible heat engine is an ideal heat engine, that is always the reference. Your actual heat engines are not reversible. So when in problem you see the word reversible, then you have to use temperature terms. Okay, 1 minus T2 by T1. That is the formula for efficiency if you find the engine to be reversible. If they have simply said it is an irreversible engine or an actual engine, then you have to go with the formula 1 minus Q2 by Q1. The difference is your actual engines are irreversible, your Carnot engine is reversible. Okay, so keep that in mind. The same thing applies for your refrigerator and heat pump also. If they say Carnot refrigerator or if they say reversible refrigerator, then use the formula T2 by T1 minus T2. If they simply say it is an ordinary refrigerator where the processes are irreversible, then you can go ahead and write it as Q2 by Q1 minus Q2. You are able to, I hope you are able to appreciate the difference between the heat engine, refrigerator, and heat pump where the processes are reversible and irreversible. Okay, hope you understand that. While we solve a couple of problems, it will be much more clear to you. Okay, okay, right, fine. So let's do a couple of problems here. Okay, problem number 1. A cyclic heat engine operates between a source temperature of 800 degrees centigrade and a sink temperature of 30 degrees centigrade. What is the least rate of heat rejection per kilowatt net output of the engine? It's a simple 2-mark question. Okay, so let's go ahead and solve this. So first you have to note the word heat engine. Okay, they have said it is a cyclic heat engine, but it is a heat engine. Nothing is mentioned whether it is a reversible or irreversible. So you can simply, if nothing is mentioned, you can take it as reversible because what is given is only the temperatures. Okay, so they have said the source temperature is 800. The first keyword is heat engine. So what is given is a heat engine. Immediately you have to draw the line diagram. That is the first thing that you have to do. So I have 2 rectangles and a circle. The circle is to represent whether it is a heat engine, refrigerator, or a heat pump. And the rectangles are to mention which is the source and which is the sink, which is T1 and T2. So because it is a heat engine, so this is going to be a T1, which is 800 degrees centigrade. So T1 is 800 degrees centigrade. That is what is given to us in the problem. Immediately convert it to Kelvin. That should be your immediate next step. So 800 plus 273 will be 1073 Kelvin. So this problem I have taken from PK Nag. So 800 plus 273 is 1073 Kelvin. Okay. Then what does T2? T2 is given as 30 degrees centigrade. Okay. So 30 plus 273 is 303. So 30 degrees centigrade, which is equal to 303 Kelvin. Okay. And for a heat engine, we know that heat is supplied to the heat engine. So this is supposed to be your Q1, and heat is rejected to the sink. So this is supposed to be your Q2, and work is done by the heat engine. So there should be a work output. Part of the heat energy, heat supplied is converted to work, and part of the heat is rejected to the sink. And they have given you heat rejection per kilowatt net output. Net output is kilowatt, 1 kilowatt. So W happens to be 1 kilowatt. Okay. So your net work output is 1 kilowatt. That is what is given to us in the problem. Okay. So these are all the given details. And they want us to find the least rate of heat rejection, which means heat rejection here is Q2. They want us to find the value of this Q2. They are asking us what is the value of Q2. Okay. So because only work done is given, we can't use the formula work done divided by heat supplied. Okay, so we have to use the formula using temperatures. So because it is a heat engine, I can write the formula efficiency is equal to 1 minus T2 by T1. So 1 minus T2 by T1. So this is equal to 1 minus 303 divided by 1073. So this is your efficiency. So you'll get something in decimal, 0 point something you will get. That is your efficiency. Okay. Once you estimate efficiency, then you can use another formula where we also define efficiency as work done divided by heat supplied. So now I know the value of this efficiency. I know the value of this work done. So I can estimate the value of this Q1. So from this equation, I can estimate the value of my Q1. So Q1 is equal to W divided by the value of my efficiency. So W here is 1 kilowatt. Let me convert it to watt. So 1000 divided by some value of efficiency. So that will give me some answer in watt or some answer in kilowatt. Okay, you can first write it in watts and then you can convert it to kilowatt. So once you have estimated the value of Q1, they are asking us to find Q2. We know this heat supplied has been converted to work and heat rejection. So Q1 is equal to W plus Q2. We saw that yesterday. So W can be written as Q1 minus Q2. So W is usually Q1 minus Q2. And they want us to find the value of Q2. So Q2 is equal to Q1 minus W. So this will give you the value of your Q2. You can write it in watts and then you can convert it to kilowatts so that you don't make mistake. Okay. So this is a very simple 2-mark question. So you estimate the efficiency, you get the value of Q1 and then you get the value of Q2. Okay. So if we look at the answers, so the efficiency here is 0.718. And then we estimate the value of Q1, which happens to be 1.392 kilowatts, and Q2 happens to be 0.392 kilowatts. Okay. So this is a very Okay, let's move on to the next problem. So here I have a domestic food freezer which maintains a temperature of minus 15 degrees centigrade. The ambient temperature is 30. If heat leaks into the freezer at a continuous rate of 1.75 kilojoule per second, what is the least power necessary to pump this heat out continuously? Okay, so this is a problem pertaining to refrigerator. So try and draw the line diagram for this particular problem. They have given you the value of T1, T2, and if heat leaks into the freezer at a continuous rate of 1.75, so which means if that amount of heat is leaking into the refrigerator, I'm going to remove that heat. So what is given is Q2. Q2 is given as 1.75. Minus 15 is your T2, 30 is your T1. So try and draw the line diagram for this quickly. And indicate Q1, Q2 and W in your diagram. Try and see if you are able to do this on your own. Okay, so we have identified T1, T2, and we have identified that it is a refrigerator. So for a refrigerator, you will be removing Q2 amount of heat from the refrigerator with a help of external work input, and you will be rejecting Q1 amount of heat to the atmosphere, okay, to the surrounding room. Okay, and now what they have given is this Q2 is 1.75. Okay, this is 1.75. They have given kilojoule per second. Joule per second is nothing but watts. So we can write this as 1.75 kilowatt. What is the least power necessary to pump this heat out? So they are asking us to find out the value of this W. What is the value of this W? That is the question. Okay. And once again in this problem, since we don't know the value of W and Q1, we can't straight away use the formula of COP with reference to the heat energy. Okay, so we have to proceed with the Carnot COP and then we have to use that to get the value of W. Similar to the previous problem, it is similar to the previous problem. So COP of R here is, refrigerator here is according to the formula, we know that COP of R is T2 divided by T1 minus T2. So this is 258 divided by 303 minus 258. So this will give you the COP of the refrigerator. Once you know the COP of the refrigerator, then I can use the formula. So yesterday we saw COP of the refrigerator is desired effect divided by input. Desired effect here is the heat removal from the freezer. So that is supposed to be Q2. And input here is the work input, which is W. So Q2 divided by W. So now you know the value of this Q2. You know the value of the COP of the refrigerator. You can straight away find the value of the work input. So W is Q2 divided by COP of the refrigerator. Very, very simple 2-mark question. A very simple 2-mark question. Q2 divided by COP of the refrigerator. So this is converted to watts, 1750 divided by COP of the refrigerator will be greater than 1. So you have to check that also. Efficiency is always less than 1. COP is always greater than 1. Make a note of it. So if you are getting some decimal value for COP, then something has gone wrong. You can identify that. So that is a checkpoint. So you will get some answer for W. So W in kilowatts or watts. Okay, very, very simple. And so if we check the answers, so COP of the refrigerator here is 5.73. And when we substitute the value for the work done, we find that it is 305.4 joule per second, which is nothing but watt. So if we write it in kilowatt, it is simply 0.31 kilowatt. 305, you can write it as, in the decimal value 0.305, you can write it as 0.31. So it is 0.31 kilowatt. Very simple. So in this third unit, there is no other problem other than this. You will be getting problems only from refrigerator, heat pump, and heat engine. There is no other problem that you have. So it is very easy that you can score marks in this particular unit. Okay, so you have to remember the line diagram. Then you have to substitute the values accordingly. So apart from that, there is nothing complicated here. Okay, so let's move on to the next problem. This is a typical 2-mark question that people always ask. An engine manufacturer claims he has manufactured an engine which will produce 210 kilowatt of power. So while taking in 0.5 kilogram per minute of fuel of calorific value 42,000 kilojoule per kilogram. Further, he states that the engine receives heat at 527 degrees centigrade and rejects heat at a temperature of 77 degrees centigrade. Find if the claim of the manufacturer is true or false. The first thing is, he's an engine manufacturer, so we will be able to identify that this is a heat engine. So that is the first step. So this is a heat engine. So draw the line diagram immediately. So they have given you the source temperature and the sink temperature. So what is given to us in the problem is a heat engine. Okay. So T1 happens to be 527. So 527 plus 273, how much do we have? 527 degrees centigrade. So 273, you have a 10 here, 9, there is another 10. So 800 Kelvin. Hope I am correct. If I am wrong, you can correct me. So this is 800 Kelvin. And T2 is 77 degrees centigrade. I think this should be 350. If I am wrong, tell me guys. If it is correct, then it's okay, fine. So this is 350 Kelvin, T2. Okay, because it is a heat engine, it is receiving heat from the source. Q1 amount of heat is received and Q2 amount of heat is rejected, and it is delivering W amount of work. Okay, and what they're asking us to find is, they are saying that an engine manufacturer has produced 200 kilowatt power delivering device. So what is given to us is, they are saying that the engine is delivering 210 kilowatt of power. Okay, and they are saying that this happens when the engine intakes, which is mass flow rate. The mass flow rate is given in 0.5 kilogram per minute. So this much amount of air fuel mixture is taken in, air fuel mixture or air, if it is a diesel engine. and they have said that the calorific value of the fuel is 42,000 kilojoule per kilogram. So this is 42,000. So this is 42,000 kilojoule per kilogram. Okay. So by when they have given this mass flow rate and the calorific value, okay, you can find out the heat supply. Okay. Calorific value is the amount of heat energy that you can receive or that a fuel can give out when it is burnt. So calorific value of the fuel is the energy content of the fuel. So when you multiply this mass flow rate with the CV, when you multiply these two, you will get the heat supplied. Okay, so your Q1 is m dot times CV. M dot multiplied by CV. So you will get the answer in kilojoule per minute. If you divide it by 60, you will get the answer in kilojoule per second. That will be your kilowatts. Okay. So if you want it in watts, you can divide it by 60. So this is 0.5 kilogram per minute multiplied by 42,000. So you have kilogram per minute multiplied by kilojoule per kilogram. So kilogram and kilogram will get cancelled and you will get the answer in kilojoule per minute. Okay, so this happens to be 21,000 kilojoule per minute. Okay, so this is your Q1. Okay, and they have given you the temperatures also. They have given you the temperatures also. So now what they're asking us to find is he is giving such a claim whether it is true or false. So what we have to do is they have given us values so that we can get the efficiency for the Carnot cycle and efficiency for the actual cycle. If you use the values W and Q1 to find out the efficiency, that will give you the efficiency of the actual cycle. So this will be actual. So for the actual cycle, the formula will be W by Q1. We have already seen this. So it is simply 210. See, here you have to be careful. Here, this fellow is in kilowatt. This fellow is in kilojoule per minute. So you have to divide this by 60 to convert it to kilowatt. So if you divide this by 60, 21,000 divide by 60. One zero will be out. And you will have 700 here. And 700 divided by 2 would be 350 kilowatt. So this fellow is 350 kilowatt. Okay. So W is 210. Q1 is 350. So you will get the value of the efficiency of the actual engine. So this will give you some value in decimal and you can convert that to percentage by multiplying it with 100. Okay, so that you can do. So this will give you the efficiency of the actual cycle. Okay, the next step is you have to find out the efficiency of the Carnot cycle, and you know the formula for efficiency of the Carnot cycle. So for the Carnot cycle, it is 1 minus T2 by T1. Okay, so now you can find out the efficiency of the Carnot cycle. So let me call this as C. So which is 1 minus T2 by T1. So 1 minus T2 is 350 divided by T1 is 800. Okay, this will give you another answer. What you have to remember is, see, when you have a reversible cycle, the reversible cycle is the Carnot cycle. That is the reference, which means that will deliver more amount of work. So the efficiency of Carnot cycle should be always greater than the efficiency of actual cycle, because Carnot cycle is the reference. Okay. So if this particular condition is matched, then the claim of the manufacturer is correct. If this particular condition is not matched, say suppose the actual efficiency is greater than the Carnot efficiency, then the claim of the manufacturer is false. He is cheating. Okay, so the Carnot efficiency is supposed to be greater than the actual efficiency. Okay, so if you would have substituted the values, now you would be able to say whether the efficiency of the Carnot cycle is greater or efficiency of the actual cycle is greater. So let's check what the real answer is. Okay, so here I have written it as heat engine, which is the actual efficiency. Actual efficiency is 60.24 and the Carnot efficiency is only 56.25. So this fellow is claiming to have an engine which is performing better than the Carnot cycle, which is not at all possible, because the Carnot cycle itself has got reversible processes. None of the processes in nature is going to be reversible. Okay, so if at all you have, when you have a reversible process, you are getting only 56.25, and when you have an irreversible process, you are getting 60.24, which is not at all possible, not at all feasible in nature. Okay, so the claim of the manufacturer is false. Okay, suppose in another situation you are getting the efficiency of the Carnot cycle is greater than the efficiency of the actual cycle, then the claim of the manufacturer is true. Okay, hope you guys have understood it. If you have any doubts, you can ask me also in between. Don't wait till the last moment. Okay, so when they are asking you to verify a claim, then you have to compare the performance of the Carnot cycle with the performance of the actual cycle. So in this example, I have taken the example of a heat engine. Similarly, they can give you the example of the refrigerator or heat pump also. If they are asking you to do for heat pump, then for heat pump, COP of heat pump is Q1 divided by Q1 minus Q2. So that is the actual heat pump. The COP of Carnot heat pump is T1 divided by T1 minus T2. Compare both these. If the COP of the Carnot heat pump is greater than the COP of the actual heat pump, the claim is correct. If the COP of the Carnot heat pump is lesser than the COP of the actual heat pump, then the claim is wrong. So here I have shown you the example of heat engine. A similar thing can be asked for a refrigerator or heat pump also. So you have to solve it accordingly. Is that clear? Okay. So these are all very, very simple questions. So now that the third unit, we have only the second law, it will be very easy for you to score marks here. Okay, one more question on this heat engine, refrigerator, and heat pump. Very simple question. A reversed Carnot cycle operating as a refrigerator has a refrigerating capacity of 100 kilogram per second. What do you mean by refrigerating capacity? Heat removal capacity. So what is given is Q2. Q2 is 100 kilowatts, while operating between the temperature limits of -20 and 35 degrees centigrade. Determine the power output and COP. It is a straightforward, straight question. So they are asking us to function this as a refrigerator. So for the refrigerator, T1 is given as 35. So this is 35. So 35 degrees centigrade, if you convert it to Kelvin, that would be 308. And T2 happens to be -20. T2 is -20, -20 degrees centigrade, which is 253 Kelvin. Just like you practice PV diagram in the second unit, here you have to practice the line diagram. So Q2 amount of heat is removed from a low temperature space with the help of work input, and Q1 amount of heat is rejected to the surrounding room or atmosphere. Okay, so this is what is given to us. Now they have said that this Q2 value is 100 kilojoule per second, which is 100 watts. Sorry, 100 kilowatts. And they want us to find the value of W and the COP. Straightforward question. So this is COP of the refrigerator. So COP of the refrigerator would be T2 divided by T1 minus T2. We have already done the second example on this, so it is similar to that. So T2 divided by T1 minus T2. So T2 here is 253 divided by 308 minus 253. So this will give you the value of the COP of the refrigerator. Okay, so some value you will get greater than 1. Once you do that, then you have to use the next formula for COP of the refrigerator, which is nothing but the heat removal divided by the work input. Q2 divided by W. Okay, so when you use this, you will get the value of W, which is nothing but Q2 divided by COP of the refrigerator. Q2 divided by COP of the refrigerator. Okay, this gives you the value of the power input and the COP of the refrigerator. So the first question is solved. Okay, and now they are saying if the system is used for heating purpose only, find its COP. What do they mean? They want to convert this refrigerator into heat pump. Okay, if they want to convert this refrigerator into heat pump, so instead of R, I will have this as HP. Okay, and now they want us to find the COP. So is the diagram still valid? Yes, it is still valid, because in a heat pump also it operates between the low temperature and the high temperature with the help of a external work input. Okay, so now that they are asking us to find out the COP of the heat pump, you can simply write this as COP of the heat pump, HP, is equal to T1 divided by T1 minus T2. So this is 308 divided by 308 minus 253. So this will give you a value greater than 1, or just like we saw in the previous class, you can straight away write this as, because it is operating between the same temperature limits, you can write this as COP of the heat pump is equal to 1 plus COP of the refrigerator. You can use this formula also. You can use this formula also. So this both will give you the same answer. Okay, so now we have solved the second subdivision also. What would be its efficiency if it runs as an engine? Okay, so now you have to invert the diagram. Okay, so if you have to invert the diagram, so if you are going to invert the diagram, then you will have heat supplied from the source instead of work output. sorry, instead of work input, you will have a work output, and you will have heat rejection Q2. Okay, now they are running this as a heat engine and they want us to find the efficiency. So efficiency is 1 minus T2 by T1. That's all. So 1 minus T2 by T1, which is 1 minus 253 divided by 308. So this will give you the value of the efficiency. Okay, either in decimal and then you can convert it to percentage. Very, very simple. Okay, so you can, for the same temperature limits, you can find the COP of the heat pump, COP of the refrigerator, and efficiency of the heat engine. That is possible. Okay, so let's look at the answers. So the COP of the refrigerator happens to be 4.6. So if you use COP of heat pump equal to 1 plus COP of the refrigerator, it is supposed to be 5.6. And that is what we get by using this formula also. See here it is 4.6, refrigerator it is 4.6, heat pump it is 5.6. The difference is just 1. Okay, and the power input for the refrigerator is 21.74 kilowatt. And efficiency of the heat engine here is 0.179, and you can write this as 17.9 percentage. If you multiply it by 100, you will get the answer in percentage. So sometimes they ask you in percentage, sometimes they ask you to write it in the decimal places itself. So in both the cases, you should know how to write it. Okay. So let's move on. I have one more example, and this is the last example which we will see under this today. And there are a couple of other examples also which we will deal in the next session. Okay, a reversible heat engine. So you have to read the question carefully here. This is the kind of problem that you will be getting in your 11-mark question. Okay, a reversible heat engine operates between two reservoirs at 600 degrees centigrade and 40 degrees centigrade. Okay, so there is a reversible heat engine which operates between 600 and 40. The engine drives a reversible refrigerator which operates between 40 degree and minus 18 degrees centigrade. Okay, so now you have got an engine which is driving a refrigerator. Okay, so let me show you how we can draw this. Okay, first of all, sorry about this. First of all, we have an engine. So here your T1 is 600 degrees centigrade, which means 873 Kelvin. Okay, so this is 873 Kelvin. So this is the source. Okay, this is an engine. So I have a circle, and inside the circle I have got heat engine. And this is Q1 amount of heat is supplied, and Q2 amount of heat is rejected. Where is it rejected? It is rejected to the sink, which is at 40 degrees centigrade. So this is my T2. Okay. And now if you find the engine is driving a refrigerator, okay, and the operation limit is between 40 and 18, minus 18. Okay, I can draw it in two ways, but it would be better if I draw it like this. Let me take this space here. So this is my T1, which is 873. I have Q1 amount of heat supplied to a heat engine, rejecting Q2 amount of heat to a reservoir which is at 40 degrees centigrade. So 40 plus 273 is 313 Kelvin. So this is 313 Kelvin. Okay. And now they are saying there is a refrigerator which operates between minus 18 degrees centigrade. So minus 18 would be 255. Okay, so there is a refrigerator which operates between 255 Kelvin and 313 Kelvin. Okay, so this is because we already have T1 and T2, let's call this as T3. Okay, and what they are saying is the heat engine is actually driving the refrigerator. So work output from the heat engine is W1, and this W1 is used for running the refrigerator. That is what they are saying. Okay, but we can't say that all of W1 is utilized for running the heat engine. Okay, so because I don't have space on the other end, I'll use the arrow mark like this. So let's say W2 is utilized for running the refrigerator, while W1 is delivered by the heat engine. Part of it is utilized for running the refrigerator. So you will have a W net, okay, which is W1 minus W2. So apart from some work which is utilized for running the refrigerator, some other work, there is a remaining amount of work which can be utilized for something else. Okay, and we haven't completed this. So here, because we have already used Q1 and Q2, let's say Q4 amount of heat is removed from this cold space and Q3 amount of heat is rejected to the surrounding atmosphere. Okay, so this is the first thing that you have to do. You have to draw the line diagram. So now if you check, everything will be in order. You have two reservoirs, 640, where the engine operates. And then you have a refrigerator which operates between 40 and minus 18. Okay, so that is also there. Now what they are, the additional details, let's see what they have given. The heat transferred to the engine is 2100 kilojoules. So heat transferred to the engine is Q1. So they have said this fellow is 2100 kilojoule. So Q1 is 2100 kilojoule. And what else have they given? And there is a net work output of 370. So when they say W net, it is W1 minus W2. So this is W net. And what is this W net? This W net is the work delivered by the heat engine minus the work input to the refrigerator. So this is W1 minus W2. Okay, for the combined, from the combined plant. Evaluate the heat transfer to the refrigerator. Okay, and the net heat transfer to the 40 degrees centigrade. So heat transfer to the refrigerator is Q4. They are asking us to find out Q4. That is the heat transfer to the refrigerator. And the net heat transfer to the 40 degrees centigrade reservoir. 40 degrees centigrade reservoir is nothing but this 313 Kelvin. So Q2 amount of heat is rejected to 313 Kelvin and Q3 is also rejected to 313 Kelvin. So they are asking us to find Q2 plus Q3. So this is the question. Okay. And the question very clearly says that it is a reversible heat engine, which means it is a Carnot heat engine. And this is also a reversible refrigerator. So that makes our job easy. Okay, that makes our job very easy. So let's find one by one. So let's take the heat engine first, because more values are given for the heat engine. So let's find the efficiency of the heat engine first, which is 1 minus T2 by T1. Because it is a Carnot heat engine, 1 minus T2 by T1 will be equal to 1 minus Q2 by Q1, or W by Q1. So this is 1 minus 313 divided by 873. This will give you the value of the efficiency of the heat engine. Okay, and then you can use the formula efficiency is equal to work done divided by heat supply. The work done here is work done by the heat engine. So let's call this as W1 by Q1. You know the value of the efficiency, you know the value of Q1. So now you will be able to get the value of the work done. So W1 is simply efficiency multiplied by Q1. So this will give you some answer in kilojoule. Okay. This is very simple. We have already done like this before. Up to this, it is the same. The next one, what we can do here is, see, they have given you the value of this W net. Okay. And just now I have found out the value of W1 also. Because W net is W1 minus W2. Why do we say minus W2 instead of plus W2? W1 is work output, which is positive. W2 is work input, which is negative. That is why we have this minus sign. If this is also work output, then it will be W1 plus W2. Because it is a work input, it is minus. So don't get confused. Now you know the value of this W net. You know the value of this W1. So now you know the value of W2 also. So now you know how much amount of work input is given to the refrigerator. That is also now known in kilojoule. Okay, correct? But before that, let's conclude this Q2 also. Let's find this Q2 also, so that everything in this heat engine is known. So you can find Q2 very easily. W1 is equal to Q1 minus Q2. W1 is equal to Q1 minus Q2. So it is easy to find the value of Q2 because you know the value of W1, you know the value of Q1. So you can get the value of Q2 easily. Why do we know? Why do we require the value of Q2? Because that is also one of the heat transferred to the 40 degree centigrade reservoir. So this is something in kilojoule. So Q2 is equal to some kilojoule. Okay. And now let's come to the refrigerator. Okay. They have said that it is a Carnot refrigerator. So let us find out the COP of the refrigerator first. So COP of the refrigerator is equal to T2. So here, usually we write T2 divided by T1 minus T2. Now the temperatures are T2 and T3. So this is T3 sink temperature divided by T2 minus T3. So T3 here happens to be 255. Divided by 313 minus 255. So this is the COP of the refrigerator. Okay. Once you find the COP of the refrigerator, now you can use the same formula. COP of the refrigerator is equal to heat removal divided by the work input. So heat removal for the refrigerator is Q4 divided by work input is W2. Now you know the value of the COP of the refrigerator. You know the value of W2, so you can find out the value of Q4. So this will give the value of Q4, which is simple multiplication of COP of the refrigerator multiplied by W2. So this will once again give you some value in kilojoule. And remember, this is the heat transferred to the refrigerator. Okay, the heat that is entering into the refrigerator which has been removed. So this is the heat transferred to the refrigerator. So one subdivision has been solved. The remaining value is Q3 only. So we know that W2 is equal to Q3 minus Q4. Now you know the value of W2, you know the value of Q4. So now you can find out the value of Q3 also. So now you will be able to find the value of Q3. Which is also in kilojoule. Okay. And the question is net heat transfer to the 40 degree centigrade reservoir. So net heat transfer to 40 degree centigrade reservoir is, there are two heat transfers which are entering into 40 degree. So Q2 is going to 40 degree centigrade reservoir. Q3 is also going to 40 degree centigrade reservoir. So Q net here is Q2 plus Q3. This will give you the amount of heat that is being transferred to the 40 degree centigrade reservoir. This will also be in kilojoule. Okay, it's only lengthy, but if you look at it, it's very, very simple. Very, very simple equations that you have, and it is very easy to solve this problem. Okay, nothing complicated here. If you just go by the steps, if you are able to draw the line diagram properly, then half of the question has already been solved. The rest is quite simple. Just you have to go step by step. Patiently, if you do that, it's quite easy. Okay? Hope you guys have understood this. So if we check the answer, so we find the efficiency to be 0.642. This is for the heat engine. And here I have kept everything in kilojoule. So I have substituted the values in kilojoule directly. So I have got the answer in kilojoule directly. Okay, so 13448.2 kilojoule, that is the work delivered by the heat engine. And we use W net to get the value of W2, which is work input to the refrigerator. I get the value of Q2. COP of the refrigerator is 4.4. We get the value of Q3. So actually what I have done here is, so in the previous slide, I have taken this as Q3 and this as Q4. So please don't get confused. So what I have done here, I have taken here Q3. So this Q3 is the heat removal. I have taken this as heat removal. So Q3 is the heat removal and Q4 is the heat that is being rejected to the atmosphere. I have taken that in reversely. So these two are in the diagram. I have showed it the other way. So here I have done it in the other way around. So please don't get confused. The procedure is the same. So stick on to whatever we have done in the previous slide. So if this is clear, then the value should also be clear. The final answer will be clear. Okay, so the final answer is 6034.08 kilojoule. Okay. So if you get confused by looking into the slide, you can contact me, no problem. So typically such questions is what you will be find, which you will find in your question paper for the 11 marks. Okay, so in the third unit, we have only the second law of thermodynamics. So there is no other question. There is no other form of question that you can get. You will be able to, you will be getting questions only from this. Okay.
So
Yes.
actually, while finding the COP and those efficiency, should we want to round it off or just write up to three decimals?
You can round it off to 2 decimal places.
Because while we round it off, or when we round it off, we will get one answer, and while not rounding off, we will be getting another answer. So there will be some variation, no, sir.
Yes, you can round it off to 2 decimal places to the maximum 3 decimal places, not beyond that. It is sufficient to round it off to 2 or 3 decimal places.
Okay.
Okay. So that variation we can adjust. That is not at all an issue. That variation we can adjust. That I can correct it. So in the last assignment, when I gave, I have rounded it off to 2 decimal places. Some of you guys have rounded up to 3 decimal places. So your answers were more accurate than mine. And when you intimated it, I have just changed my answers accordingly, or I have given you, or I have given an alternate option, something like that. So that I can do. So when I look into your paper for correction, no, maybe your assignments or mid semester paper, when I look into it for correction, when I go through it, I will be able to understand where the mistake is. So if it is because of the decimal places, then that is not at all an issue. Okay, so the usual procedure is you can round it off to 2 decimal places. That is sufficient. But in some cases, if the values are very low, say 0.001, something like that, then you can round it off to 3 decimal places. So that is the usual procedure that you can follow. Okay.
Okay.
So okay, fine. So what we will do is, so I have taken only 5 examples for today, and now we will proceed further into this third unit, and we will solve a couple of problems later on, after probably in the next session. Okay. The other part of the third unit is irreversibility. So we have already seen what a reversible process is. A process is said to be reversible only when the system and the surroundings are brought back to this initial state, to their original state. Or to say it other ways, there should not be any change in the universe. When I say the universe, it constitutes both the system and the surroundings. So if the universe does not see any change, then that is what is called as a reversible process. But such a kind of process is not there in nature. There is no reversible process. Once there is a process on, then there is going to be an irreversibility. So what is the cause of this irreversibility? There is a permanent change in the system and the surroundings. In some case, the system is brought back, but there is an impact on the surroundings. Okay. So there is a permanent damage done to the universe. So what are the causes of it? Okay, there are two major causes. One is the lack of equilibrium during the process, and the other one is the involvement of dissipative effects. These are the two causes of irreversibility, and we are going to look into this. Okay, so what is the lack of equilibrium? So in thermodynamic equilibrium, we have seen that for a system to be in thermodynamic equilibrium, you need to have thermal equilibrium, you need to have mechanical equilibrium, you need to have phase equilibrium, you need to have internal equilibrium, and you need to have chemical equilibrium. Only if all these are met, then you say that a system is in thermodynamic equilibrium. But in most of the cases, we don't get this equilibrium. Okay, and let's see a couple of examples. The first one is heat transfer through a finite temperature difference. Okay, so whenever you have a temperature difference, you have a heat transfer. Okay, the normal example is a cup of coffee that your mother makes at home. She makes it hot, but if you fail to drink it within 2 to 3 minutes, if you leave it on the table for 5 to 10 minutes, then the hotness of coffee is lost, not to return back again until you heat it. It is not going to regain its heat energy. So if there is a temperature difference, if there is a finite temperature difference, okay, if there is a finite temperature difference, if the temperature difference is very, very small, say the atmospheric temperature is 30 degrees centigrade, and the temperature of the object is 30.2 degrees centigrade, then that is very, very small temperature difference. We can say infinitesimal temperature difference. Then maybe that can be reversed. Okay, I say maybe that can be reversed because the temperature difference is very, very small. But if the temperature difference is huge, say 10 degree, 20 degree, then that temperature difference we can't do anything. There will be a heat transfer, and that heat transfer we can't revert it, or it can't revert it on its own. So that is number one. Number two, lack of pressure equilibrium with the interior of the system or between the system and the surroundings. Okay, so if there is a pressure difference, then there is no mechanical equilibrium. Okay, so if there is going to be a difference in pressure, then automatically there will be a change of state. Okay, so so that lack of pressure equilibrium will also lead to irreversibility. And free expansion, we have seen free expansion, it is a spontaneous action. We have seen that in a compartment, when you have a room where you have two compartments, and in one compartment you have got air, and in the other compartment it is just vacuum. Nothing is there. Everything has been uh, evacuated, and it is just empty without any air in it. Okay, it is just vacuum. When you remove the compartmentalization, or when you remove the diaphragm or the membrane, whatever you call it, if you remove it, then there is a free expansion which is spontaneous. It happens. I should not say spontaneous. It just expands freely. Okay. In fact, it is. Uh, in fact, it is spontaneous, but it is a free expansion where it does not do any work. Okay. In case of a cylinder piston arrangement, you have got a work done against the piston. Okay, the gases are doing work against the piston, pushing the piston upwards. So in free expansion, you don't have that. Okay, and once you have that free expansion, it is not going to go back to the compartment. Where when I introduce the compartment again, the air is not going to get pushed back to that compartment, and it is not going to get evacuated on its own. Okay, so that is not at all possible. So that is also an irreversibility. So these are examples that they have given. Dissipative effects, friction, it is, you're all very this is a very common example. We all ride vehicles. Your wheel has to come into contact with the road, and you have friction. Only if you have friction, uh, you need to have friction, right? Whenever you have a moving object, you will have friction. A moving object on a stationary plane, you will have friction. Okay, you will have a force that is acting against the moving object, trying to stop it. So that is your friction. So they call perpetual motion machine of a third kind. So if there is no friction at all, then that is the perpetual motion machine of the third kind. The continual motion of a movable device in the complete absence of friction is known as perpetual motion machine of a third kind. And then we have paddle wheel work transfer, transfer of electricity through a resistor. We will see all that in the coming slides. Okay. So these are the irreversibility. Causes of irreversibility, you should keep in mind lack of equilibrium, and the other one is dissipative effects. Okay. And let's see the proof of it. Heat transfer through a finite temperature difference. Okay. So the picture I have taken it from Engineering Thermodynamics by P.K. Nag. So that is the reference. Okay. So I have a reversible heat engine which operates between a source temperature TA and sink temperature TB. Q1 amount of heat is supplied by the source to the heat engine, and Q amount of heat is rejected to the sink. Okay, this is happening. Okay, there is a heat engine which is operating between the source and the sink. Apart from this heat engine, I have a heat transfer which takes place between the source and the sink. Apart from the heat engine, away from the heat engine, I have a separate heat transfer QAV. Okay, so this is a heat transfer through a finite temperature difference. Let's assume that the heat transfer through a finite temperature difference is reversible. Let's assume that it is reversible. Okay, so if Q1 amount of heat is supplied to the heat engine, okay, so QAB is the amount of heat that is moving from the source to the sink. Okay, so QAB is the amount of heat that is transferred from the source to the sink apart from the heat engine. If this is to be reversed, then QBA will be the amount of heat that will move back to the source. If it is completely possible, if whatever heat has gone from A to B, if it has to be reversed, then QBA will be the amount of heat that will go back to the source. And let's imagine that this QBA is equal to QAB. Okay. And if we assume that QBA is the amount of heat that is going to go back from TB to TA. If we assume that this QBA is equal to Q2, an assumption. If we assume that QBA is equal to Q2, because what is happening is Q1 is the amount of heat that is supplied to the engine and Q2 is the amount of heat that is rejected to the engine. Okay, so if we assume that when the during the reversal, QBA is the amount of heat that is going back to the source. If we assume that that is equal to Q2, then what happens is Q2 amount of heat will be rejected back to the source. If Q2 is equal to QBA, then I don't need this sink at all. This violates the Kelvin-Planck statement, which tells us that two reservoirs are required for a heat engine to operate. Okay, so by the simple example, we can, or by the simple demonstration, we can say that heat transfer through a finite temperature difference is not reversible. Okay, this first picture, okay, what I have is a source at temperature TA and I have a sink at temperature TB. Okay, and I'm going to have a heat transfer from source to sink, and the heat transfer from source to sink because of the temperature difference is QAB. Because it is path dependent, it is moving from A to B, so we call it as QAB. That is point number one. Point number two, between the same temperature limits TA and TB, I have a reversible heat engine which receives Q1 amount of heat from TA and rejects Q2 amount of heat to TB. Okay. Now what I am saying is I am going to reverse this heat transfer, which means I have sent QAB amount of heat from temperature TA to TB. So whatever heat has been transferred from A to B, let me take it back to A. So QBA has to be taken back to the source. So I'm going to take QBA back to the source. Okay, so what I'm doing is now I'm going to run this engine in such a way that this Q2 amount of heat which is being rejected to the sink is equal to QBA. Okay, so Q1 W is Q1 minus Q2, right? So we have W equal to Q1 minus Q2. Okay, so Q2 will be Q1 minus W. So this is your Q2. Okay, now I'm going to run this engine in such a way that this Q2 is equal to QBA. If I do that, then I will be eliminating this sink. There are 2 points you have to note here. One thing is QAB is equal to QBA. And when I say I'm going to run an engine such a way that Q2 is equal to QBA, then I am eliminating this sink. This is like saying your heat engine operates with only one reservoir, which is a violation of the Kelvin-Planck statement. And that's why our assumption is wrong. And from that, we prove that heat transfer through a finite temperature difference is irreversible. And QBA is equal to QAB.
Yes,
If
sir.
you look at the logic, if you look at the logic, QAB is the amount of heat that is being sent to the sink. Okay, and if QBA is the equivalent amount of heat that is supposed to be sent to the source, if Q2 is equal to QBA as being assumed, then actually W will be equal to,
0.
if W is equal to 0, then that is not at all a heat engine, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, but we have assumed that it is a heat engine. That was our assumption. So now we said it is a heat engine, but the moment you say W equal to 0, that assumption is violated. So whatever assumption we are taking is wrong. So we said that the heat transfer through a finite temperature difference is reversible. Because it is violating the assumption, we come to a conclusion that heat transfer through a finite temperature difference is not possible. So that is irreversible. Are you able to understand this? This is a kind of vague, but that is how it is being proved. Are you clear?
Yes, sir.
Still not convinced?
Yes, sir. Got it.
Okay. The other thing is free expansion. Okay. So in free expansion, we have already seen this. So we have gas here in one compartment, and the other compartment is evacuated, and you have just vacuum. Okay. So what we do is we remove the diaphragm, and we said this gas is going to immediately go and fill the space. But because it is not doing work against anything, work done here is 0. So this we saw during our work transfer. Okay. So now what we are doing is we are going to see whether this free expansion is irreversible or not. So just like the previous case, let's assume that free expansion is also reversible. So what we do is, instead of allowing this gas to go through this diaphragm by removing this diaphragm, what I do is I have an engine here. I allow this air to go through this engine so that some amount of work will be done here. Okay, and let it fill the space. Okay, so instead of removing the diaphragm, what I'm doing is I am allowing this gas to go through the engine so that it does some work. Okay, now what I do is, now all this gas which were here, they have gone, or not all, till the equilibrium is attained. Everything has part of it has shifted to B. When you remove when you remove this diaphragm, when this diaphragm is removed, this A will come into this B in such a way that the pressure, temperature, everything is in equilibrium, right? So it is all dispersed inside this room. Similarly, you will have some amount of gas here, some amount of gas here, and an equilibrium is attained. Okay, but some work has been done. So this is the state. Okay, to bring this back, to bring this B back to A, because only when you bring the system back to its initial state, then we can say that something is reversible. So what you do is you supply heat, okay, from a heat source to this B, so that it is being pushed back to A. Okay, so what you do is you supply heat. When I said work done here, what is the work done here? This gas is just there, right? All it possesses is its molecular internal energy, nothing else. I have not heated this A in a cylinder piston arrangement. During the combustion process, you are heating it, right? While heating during the combustion, that heat energy with the high pressure and temperature, it is pushing the piston back. That is the expansion process, which is taken as work. Here I have not supplied any heat. In the space A, no heat is supplied. All the energy the gas possesses is just its molecular internal energy. Okay, and this engine is a hypothetical engine, which means a theoretical engine, which is able to tap the molecular internal energy of the gas here. Okay, there is no other energy there. So the molecular internal energy of the gas is converted into work here. So when it goes and occupies the space in B, it has lost its molecular internal energy. So theoretically speaking, if I have to bring back to A, I have to supply some molecular internal energy to B, okay, and raise its molecular internal energy so that it goes back to A. What I am saying is all theoretical. I am not talking about the reality. We are talking about hypothetical situation. We are talking about some virtual situation in which in reality is not going to happen, because we don't have an engine which can convert or tap the molecular internal energy of a gas. Okay, so the molecular internal energy of the gas is converted into work, and in the event of that conversion, it has lost its molecular internal energy. So if I have to bring back that to A, I have to raise the molecular internal energy so that it goes back to A. Okay, uh, to make you understand very simply, it is like, say your mother makes dosa or idli by using the uh, flour that you have in home. மாவு வச்சிருக்காங்க இல்லையா, மாவு வச்சு உங்க அம்மா இட்லியோ தோசையோ சுடுறாங்கன்னு வச்சுக்கோ. Okay, that is the process 1. மாவு இட்லியா மாறிடுச்சு, that is process 1 2. Now to bring that back to the initial state, அப்போ நான் வந்து தோசை கல்ல தோசை மாவை ஊத்துறேன். Okay, I have given it heat, it has converted into dosa. Now what I'm going to do is, in a hypothetical situation, அந்த தோசையில இருக்கக்கூடிய சூடெல்லாம் நான் எடுக்க போறேன். ஓகே, அப்படி நான் எடுக்கிறதுனால திருப்பி அது என்னவா மாறணும்? It has to get converted back to flour. அது மாவா மாறணும். அப்படி ஒரு சிச்சுவேஷனை பத்தி நம்ம பேசுறோம், புரியுதா? ஸோ மாவை நான் தோசையா மாத்தியாச்சு, சூடு கொடுத்து அதை நான் தோசையா மாத்திட்டேன். இப்ப நான் அந்த சூடை ரிமூவ் பண்ணி திருப்பி அதை என்னவா மாத்த போறேன்? மாவா மாத்த போறேன். அப்படி நடக்க போறதே இல்ல, பட் தட் இஸ் த ஹைபோதெட்டிக்கல் situation. Similarly, we are talking like this here. So there is an internal molecular energy for this gas. That internal molecular energy is converted into work. So the gas has lost its molecular internal energy and it has come back and it has come to this compartment B. So now if I have to move it to compartment A, I have to give it the molecular internal energy so that it goes back to A to its original state. So what I'm going to do to raise its internal energy, I'm going to supply heat. Okay, in A I never supplied heat, in B I am supplying heat, and we assume that in that hypothetical situation it has gone back to A and the cycle is completed. Okay, and this is a heat engine. Okay, so now we find the heat which has been supplied here. Now there is an engine which operates with only one reservoir again. இங்க ஒரே ஒரு heat source தான் இருக்கு. There is no heat sink. சிங்கே இல்ல. நான் இங்க ஒரு இன்ஜினை ரன் பண்ணேன். அந்த இன்ஜினுக்கு நான் அந்த இன்ஜினை நான் ரன் பண்ணேன். But to supply heat and push it back to its original state, there is only one heat source. There is no heat sink here. Okay, so this once again violates the Kelvin-Planck's statement. So this expansion is also not possible. Okay, so this is some hypothetical explanation which is being given. So if you are able to understand, it is well and good, or if you have doubts, you can ask me personally also. Okay, so let's move on. So this is another example which we have seen under dissipative effect. So you have got this friction. So you have a flywheel which is rotating with some kinetic energy. So you have a brake block. This is like the brakes that you have in your two-wheelers, the drum brake that you have. In cycle, if you have ridden a cycle, you would have known this. You have this block which will come and rest against the rim of the wheel and stop the cycle. Okay, so that brake block you have. So when you apply the brake, when you apply force to this brake, it will press against the wheel and it will stop the wheel. Okay, and if you look at this braking action, okay, what happens is the movement of this distance between, so if you take this particular distance, say at this particular distance, the distance between the flywheel and the brake block is very, very small. Okay, if you do that in meters or whatever, it is very, very small. So the work done is negligible. You can even assume it to be zero. So the work done here for the braking action can be assumed to be zero. And if you look at the braking action, it is not going to take 5 minutes or 10 minutes. It's not even going to take 30 seconds or 40 seconds. It's going to be very quick. The braking action is very quick. So the heat transfer during the braking action is also very, very small. So you can neglect the heat transfer as well. Okay, at the instant of braking action, your heat transfer can also be neglected. Okay, so the flywheel, which was initially rotating at a higher velocity, okay, it is brought back to rest. So when I say heat transfer and work transfer is neglected, then all you have is the internal energy. So delta E is equal to 0. So Q is equal to delta E plus W. So Q is 0, W is 0, so delta E is 0. So when you say delta E is 0, if we write the balance for the energy balance for the this particular system, you have internal energy at state point 1, and you have the kinetic energy at state point 1, which is half mv1 squared, and you have the potential energy mgz1. And there is no flow work here. There is no flow of air or fluid here. So there is no P1 V1 case here. Okay, so which should be equated to U2 plus half mv2 squared plus mg z2. See, the potential energy does not have any role here. Both of them are at the same height, so there is no change in potential energy. If you look at the second condition, V2 is brought to 0. The flywheel is brought to 0, so the velocity is 0. So what has happened is, when I stop the flywheel, only the internal energy of the flywheel has gone up. I had an internal energy, I had a kinetic energy, and when the kinetic energy is brought to 0, U1 has added up with this kinetic energy and my internal energy has gone up. That is what has taken place. Okay, now we have to prove that this particular dissipative effect of friction is irreversible. So let's convert this into a cycle and see if that cycle is reversible or irreversible. Okay, so let's have 3 processes. Okay, the first thing that happens is the internal energy of the flywheel has gone up. Okay. So now we have stopped the flywheel. The flywheel has come to rest. Now we have to get it back to its initial state. Okay. So what we do is the internal energy of the flywheel has gone up. Now we have, and the flywheel has come to rest. Now the flywheel has to rotate in such a way that the internal energy goes back to its initial condition at 1. Okay. So now let the flywheel start rotating at a particular RPM at the expense of what? At the expense of its internal energy. Okay. So that the uh, uh, we know that internal energy is a function of temperature. So let the temperature come down. Okay. So that is your process 1. Okay. Now what we do is this flywheel shall be again brought to rest. How shall it be again brought to rest? I'm using this flywheel which is rotating at a particular speed to raise the weight. So if I add more weight, okay, which is greater than the RPM of the flywheel, then it will come to rest. So with that energy balance, let me bring the flywheel to rest without any rise in temperature. Okay. And let me now, so what I have done, கொஞ்சம் கவனிச்சு புரிஞ்சுக்க ட்ரை பண்ணு. I have a flywheel which is rotating. நான் என்ன பண்ணேன், ஒரு பிரேக் பிளாக்கை கொண்டு வந்து அந்த ஃப்ளைவீல கொடுத்து அந்த ஃப்ளைவீல நிப்பாட்டிட்டேன். அந்த ஃப்ளைவீல நிப்பாட்டினதுனால அதனுடைய இன்டர்னல் எனர்ஜி ரைஸ் ஆச்சு. அந்த இன்டர்னல் எனர்ஜி ரைஸ் ஆனதுனால அதனுடைய டெம்பரேச்சர் ரைஸ் ஆயிருக்கு. ஓகே, இட் இஸ் நாட் பிகாஸ் ஆஃப் த ஹீட் டிரான்ஸ்ஃபர், இட் இஸ் பிகாஸ் ஆஃப் த ரைஸ் இன் இன்டர்னல் எனர்ஜி. இதுதான் நடந்தது. இப்ப நம்ம என்ன பண்றோம்னா, இந்த சிச்சுவேஷனை என்னுடைய இனிஷியல் ஸ்டேட்டா எடுத்துக்கிறேன். எந்த சிச்சுவேஷனா? என்னுடைய ஃப்ளைவீல் ரெஸ்ட்ல இருக்கக்கூடிய சிச்சுவேஷன் இஸ் மை இனிஷியல் சிச்சுவேஷன். Okay, the flywheel is at rest with an increase in the internal molecular energy with a rise in temperature. Now what I am going to do is I am going to convert this rise in internal energy back to kinetic energy. Once again, this is hypothetical. The internal energy of the flywheel is converted into kinetic energy in such a way that the internal energy is decreasing and the temperature is decreasing. This is number 1. இப்போ இந்த ஃப்ளைவீல் என்ன செய்ய ஆரம்பிச்சாச்சு? ரொட்டேட் ஆக ஆரம்பிச்சாச்சு. இனிஷியல் ஸ்டேட் என்ன? ஃப்ளைவீல் இஸ் அட் ரெஸ்ட், அதனுடைய இன்டர்னல் எனர்ஜி இஸ் மோர். அதான் இனிஷியல் ஸ்டேட். இனிஷியல் ஸ்டேட் என்ன? ஃப்ளைவீல் இஸ் அட் ரெஸ்ட், டெம்பரேச்சர் இஸ் மோர். இப்போ நான் என்ன பண்றேன்? அட் த எக்ஸ்பென்ஸ் ஆஃப் த டெம்பரேச்சர், அட் த எக்ஸ்பென்ஸ் ஆஃப் த இன்டர்னல் எனர்ஜி, த ஃப்ளைவீல் இஸ் ரொட்டேட்டிங் அகேன். இப்போ நான் என்ன செய்யணும்? இந்த ஃப்ளைவீலை ஸ்டாப் பண்ணணும், அதனுடைய இன்டர்னல் எனர்ஜியை ரைஸ் பண்ணணும். So what I do is to stop the flywheel. Now I am going to add weights here. So I am going to, the flywheel is actually rotating. What I'm going to do is I'm going to add weights here without raising the temperature. Okay, in such a way that the flywheel stops. In the weight தாங்க முடியாம the flywheel has to stop rotating. இது process 2. Process 3 is now the flywheel has stopped. But what about its internal energy? Higher இல்ல. இனிஷியல் ஸ்டேட் என்ன? ஹை இன்டர்னல் எனர்ஜி, ஃப்ளைவீல் இஸ் அட் ரெஸ்ட். இப்போ இதனுடைய இன்டர்னல் எனர்ஜியை கம்மி பண்ணிட்டோம், ஃப்ளைவீல ஸ்டாப்புக்கு கொண்டு வந்தாச்சு. இப்போ திருப்பி அதனுடைய இன்டர்னல் எனர்ஜியை நான் என்ன செய்யணும்? ரைஸ் பண்ணணும். ஸோ வாட் ஐ டூ இஸ் ஐ சப்ளை ஹீட் டு த ஃப்ளைவீல் டு ரெஸ்டோர் த சிஸ்டம் டு இட்ஸ் ஒரிஜினல் ஸ்டேட். Now the heat has been given so that the flywheel is at rest and it is at a higher internal energy. Okay. இப்போ என்ன நடக்குது? Now it is also a cycle, and in this cycle I am having heat. I am supplying heat at only one reservoir. There is no heat sink. There is only a heat source. Heat source ல இருந்து நான் heat supply பண்றேனே ஒழிய there is no heat sink. So though there is a cycle which is likened to a cyclic heat engine, here I have only a source and there is no sink. So this is also in violation of the Kelvin-Planck statement. So this proves that dissipative effect of friction is irreversible. Okay, இது எல்லாமே hypothetical situations தான். இந்த எல்லா situationsலயும் what we are trying to prove is we are trying to generate or form a cycle which is similar to a cyclic heat engine. And when we do that, we are finding that this cyclic heat engine has got only one reservoir. And when only one reservoir is present, the Kelvin-Planck statement is violated. And then we prove that this is not reversible but irreversible. Try and understand this. If not, we can discuss this privately. Okay. The same case here, paddle wheel work transfer. So in paddle wheel work transfer, you have an insulated environment which is filled with air or some sort of a fluid. You give some work to the stirrer. When you rotate the stirrer, the internal energy of the gas will rise again. Okay, so now you are raising the internal energy of the gas. Okay, so now what the assumption is, so if you have to reverse it, then whatever work you have given to the system, to the fluid inside this space, it should lose its internal energy and it should deliver work. When I did some work, the internal energy of the gas has raised. Now the internal energy of the gas should be converted back to work. So now what we do is, so we assume that the internal energy of the gas is raised once again. So when I raise the internal energy of the gas, it should be converted to work. Okay. So the first process is, so இப்ப நம்ம என்ன பண்ணிருக்கோம்னா, here there is a space where there is some amount of air. You are introducing a stirrer, you are doing some work on this particular space, and the internal energy of the gas has gone up. Okay, right? So இத நம்மளுடைய initial state எடுத்துக்கிறோம். The internal energy of the gas has gone up. Okay, and now what I'm going to do is, I am losing the internal energy of the gas in such a way that it is giving me some work output. That is process number 1. It is losing the internal energy of the gas to convert into work. That is process number 1. Number 2, if I have to bring back to its initial state and higher internal energy, if I have to bring back to its initial state, then I have to supply some heat here. Okay, so if I supply some heat from the heat source, its internal energy will rise once again. Okay, this is equivalent to the amount of work that has been given out by the gas. So now I have an engine, okay, which is delivering work equivalent to the amount of heat supplied. Imagine this as a cycle which is going again and again. I am delivering heat and all of heat is converted into work. Is that possible? It is not possible. It is perpetual motion machine of the second kind. In a perpetual motion machine of the second kind, all of heat transfer is converted into work. That is not possible. Some amount of heat should be rejected to the sink. Okay, so here, while trying to reverse it back to its initial state, we find that it is violating the second law of thermodynamics. Okay, it is perpetual motion machine of the second kind. So that is not possible. So your paddle wheel work transfer is also irreversible. This one is very simple. Transfer of electricity through a wire. So you are conducting current through a wire. So when you conduct current through the wire, the temperature of the wire will go up. It will get heated up. What is the reverse of it? If you just simply give heat, will it give you current? It is not possible. If that is the case, then there is no energy demand at all. You can very easily generate heat. But we don't have such a material. When something is getting heated up, it is not giving electricity. So that is not at all there. Okay.